Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys again to the show. It's going to be another episode, and I got a lot I want to get into in today's show. So we're going to be breaking them down into many different episodes for you guys and just posting them in different uploads so the videos are not too long for you guys. So in the first episode, I want to talk about how the Clippers bench was able to show their championship resolve the other night against the Portland Trail Blazers. So that's what I want to get into. But before we get into that, I want you guys to go ahead and make sure you hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button, guys, because remember, we're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. And also make sure you hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Now, another thing that's worth saying is that if you want to check out the show, we also have it on Spotify and iTunes. We're going to link it in the description below. Now, I know some of you have been asking us questions about the iTunes link. We're just working on that to make sure everything is running smoothly. So we're going to be answering your questions after we upload these videos today. But just rest assured that we're going to have that up and it's going to be up and running and everything should be working out just fine with that, because I know some of you guys just prefer to listen to a podcast, which I totally understand. But Marco is the brains behind that, and he's the one that's really running that department of the company. So I'm going to speak to him and make sure everything is working properly so we can get that going for you guys. So with that being said, I got a lot I want to cover on the show today. And I just want to start off right here as where I left off. Now, yesterday was a pretty interesting night in the association. There were a lot of games. A lot of games were played, and as I said before, we try to cover as many topics as we can, but at a certain point, we're a small company, currently, so we're kind of limited. In the future, we would like to cover, shows. We would like to cover topics pretty much like First Take or Undisputed, but for now, we're just sort of feeling our way through. With that being said, though, yesterday was an interesting game. Okay, it was an interesting game for the Clippers. And it was also an interesting game for the Trailblazers. Now, why do I say that? Well, for the Trailblazers, as you know, they're trying to get to that number 8th seed in the Western Conference, or at least, get into the play-in tournament where they can go and fight for their playoff, let's say, lives or whatever it is. And in that final spot, they were also contending for that spot with a bunch of different teams. For example, in the final 8th spot, you have the Memphis Grizzlies. You have the Portland Trail Blazers. You have the Phoenix Suns, who have been, let's say the surprise in the bubble. They've been amazing in the bubble. And you have the Spurs. Now, the Pelicans completely fell out of contention. And you also have the Sacramento Kings, who I think are not going to make it. So it's really between the Grizzlies and the Trail Blazers and the Suns. Now, the Trail Blazers and the Phoenix Suns are tied for losses. Okay, they both have 39 losses. However, the Trailblazers have one more win. Now, the Grizzlies, however, they have 37 losses, and they just picked up a game. So now they're 2 games ahead in the loss column. So it's going to be pretty hard for the Portland Trailblazers to catch them. Now, yesterday's game was critical. It was really critical. But when the game started, the first thing all of us noticed, at least some of the people that saw that game, was that Kawhi Leonard obviously didn't play and Montrezl Harrell wasn't available. Okay, so they sat Kawhi. And for me, I have no issue with it. I think he's played 4 of the 5 games. I think they played 5 games in the bubble. And he's been great. The first game, he was sort of feeling himself. But towards the latter games, I think he's been averaging around 27 points in these games. And he's starting to get back into playing shape. One thing I will say about Kawhi, though, that I've noticed about him in this bubble is that he doesn't seem as athletic as he was prior to the stoppage of games. In March and February and all of that, he was looking amazing. If you go back and look at some of his regular season highlights, he was there dunking. He can get off the floor pretty quickly. So I don't know what that is. Maybe he's a little bit sluggish. Maybe he's just feeling his way back into the game or whatever it is. But he looked a lot sharper as far as his shot and everything. So I think Kawhi is going to play some of these other games just to make sure he gets his legs under him. So he wasn't in the game. Montrezl Harrell hasn't played any of the games because of a family emergency that he was tending to for the passing of his grandmother, but they said he'll be on his way back and he should make his return this coming week. So we understood that. Now, in the first quarter of that game, it was close. It was a close game. They went back and forth, but Gary Trent Jr. was out there looking like Reggie Miller or Stephen Curry or Ray Allen. This guy in the Orlando bubble, at least up until the first quarter, had hit 25 of 38 three-pointers. 25 of 38 three-pointers. That is well above 50% from the three-point line. And I hadn't been watching many of the Portland Trailblazers games, but when I started watching them, in the second quarter, the guy hit 3 three-pointers just in the second quarter. And I was just like, ooh, this dude is a damn good shooter. Now, granted, the Orlando bubble is only 8 games. It's 8 games in total, and we have a sample size of maybe 5. I think everyone has played 5 games. So it's a small sample size. It's one thing to, shoot these many, hit this percentage of three-pointers in 5 games. And it's another thing to do it over 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 games in a season. So I'm not saying he's Stephen Curry, but nevertheless, the dude is playing like an all-time great three-point shooter. His stroke looks sharp, and so that's been the story for the Blazers, and one of the stories in the bubble, to be quite honest with you. Now, one thing I noticed though in the first half was the lack of, was the fact that Kawhi, just because Kawhi wasn't on the floor, you could see how affected the Clippers were defensively, especially in the first half. I was really disappointed with the type of defense they were playing. I mean, they allowed their opponents to score so many points, and they allowed themselves to be sucked into this up and down fast break game where, there was very little defense being played. The Portland Trailblazers were pretty much getting any shot that they wanted, and I thought it was a sloppy game from the defensive end of the floor. Now, some people would say, well, I think one of the coach for the Portland Trailblazers said these are 2 great offensive teams. Fine, but there's no reason to give up 50, 60 type, points in a half. I think that was just too much. And I think it wasn't a good sign defensively. And you can see that, for whatever reason, their defense is a lot sharper when Kawhi seems to be on the floor. So I was really disappointed with the Clippers' defense in the first half. They just looked disinterested, really, and they looked like they wanted to get into a shooting contest with the Trailblazers, and that's the type of game that the Trailblazers wanted to play because that's how they're most likely going to win these games. They're most likely not going to beat you with their defense, but with their offense, they can be very, very dangerous. Now, going into that third quarter, I thought that the Clippers looked quite sloppy in the beginning of the third quarter, which was also a little bit disappointing because they've been playing kind of well. Yes, they dropped a game here and a game there, but I think they're beginning to get into their identity, and last game was pretty impressive, I think, the way that they were able to win that game. But for the first 3 quarters and a half, they just looked disinterested defensively. That's just my opinion. Now, Paul George, however, in that third quarter was pretty active defensively in the third quarter, and he seemed to get his mental focus midway through that third quarter and really start getting dialed into the game. And they needed that because their other star in Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing. Now, Paul George is all-world, so I expect nothing but the best from him in the NBA bubble. Well, first of all, in the NBA season, this guy is shooting 41% from the three-point line, and he's just been unstoppable in this bubble. And I said it earlier in the regular season when a lot of people had some misgivings about Paul George, saying that he wasn't such of a great. Not that he wasn't a great player, but because he's not delivered so many times in the past, they've come to just say, well, they come to not expect much from him. And I tried to tell a lot of people that this guy is amazing. I mean, he's amazing, and if you watch him as a scorer, he scores effortlessly. He's not as let's say efficient as an overall field goal shooter as Kawhi Leonard, because Paul George shoots around 43, 44% from the field, generally, and Kawhi shoots around 47, 48. But when it comes to his overall game, his ability to be explosive, his quick release on his three-point shot, and to just really put up buckets in a hurry, I think, he has the potential to be nuclear. He's one of those guys that can go out and get you 40 points in a game. And you ask yourself, that was a quiet 40, man. This dude it seems effortless. So Paul George seemed to be more engaged in that third quarter. And the game was closer towards the end of the third quarter. Now, let me just say this about one of the all-time greats in Carmelo Anthony, another bright spot for the Portland Trailblazers. Carmelo had 21 points by the end of the third quarter. And I think Carmelo is making his case as to why he deserved to be in the league and why he's going to be most likely in the Hall of Fame. You know, he's a 3-time gold medalist winner. He's an amazing scorer. He scored, I think, over 25,000 points in his career, I believe. So Carmelo he still has the ability to go out there and get you buckets, and I think it's a welcoming sign for the Portland Trailblazers, not just this season, but probably moving forward, that they have someone, a veteran player like this, that can still put the ball in the bucket. So that was really good for Carmelo, and it was good to see, to be quite honest with you. Now, JaMychal Green is he's just been a model of consistency, and I've been really impressed with his defense and his three-point shooting. He comes in the game, he knows exactly what he wants to do, and given the fact that, you know, Patrick Beverley is out and some of the key players for the Clippers are out, this guy just comes in. He has like the next man up mentality. He comes in and he does his job. He doesn't really seem flustered by the moment. He seems like he'll guard any defensive assignment that's put in front of him. And I like the way he plays. He looks like someone that plays winning basketball. He understands his role perfectly, and which is something that I'm beginning to see from Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris seems to be finally understanding his role. In New York, maybe it was a 20-point plus per game scorer, but now he knows that he's not going to be able to average those type of numbers with the Clippers. So he's beginning to get into his role and understand when he needs to take his shots and just play winning basketball. If you saw the game prior, I thought he did a fantastic job, to be honest with you, and I was really impressed with Marcus Morris in that game. Now, in the third and fourth quarter, the Clippers, Doc Rivers and them, tried to contain Damian Lillard, and they were throwing a lot of double teams at him, just trying to get the ball out of his hand. They weren't allowing him to, catch the ball and just go to work. They were just trying to get the ball out of his hand and say, okay, let somebody else beat us. Now, granted, they had Carmelo Anthony, who's a three-point threat. They have Gary Trent Jr., who's a threat. And you have C.J. McCollum, who's a threat. But I think that they understood that the Portland Trailblazers' most dangerous player is Damian Lillard, and they tried their best to make sure he didn't get into a rhythm, which came back to bite the Portland Trailblazers at the end of the game. Now, as I said before, the Clippers' depth really started to impress me, because they took Paul George out, I believe, with about 6 to 5 minutes left in the game, and around 30 seconds, with about 30 seconds left in the game, the Clippers were actually able to take a lead, and I was really impressed by them, because their stars weren't there. I don't even think Lou Williams was playing in the final minutes. It was just an impressive win. Landry Shamet played some good minutes. Reggie Jackson played some good minutes. JaMychal Green played some good minutes. Terrence Mann was out there. He was contributing to the best of his abilities. So I was really impressed with the way that they were really able to close out that game. And obviously, what happened at the end of the game with Damian Lillard missing those 2 free throws and, watching Patrick Beverley on the sideline was just hilarious. But I'm going to get into that in the next segment of this show. So I'm going to leave that for the next segment. But overall, though, I think that the Clippers were able to show their championship resolve. I think, once again, their depth was able to come in and just really show you why they are the deepest team in the NBA by far. And they're nothing to play with. And when everyone is healthy, or when they're at least 85% of the way healthy, they're going to be a really tough out. Once they're clicking from all cylinders and they're really playing their game and doing exactly what they, set out to do from the jump ball, I think they're definitely the best team in the Orlando bubble, and they're beginning to show that. So those are my thoughts and opinions on that game. And I thought it was an impressive win, and they showed their championship resolve, given that Kawhi Leonard was out, Paul George sat out the majority of the fourth quarter, and they were still able to come out and pull out a win against a very desperate Portland Trailblazers team that really needed that win. Now, granted, Damian Lillard kind of capitulated at the end of that game, but nevertheless, you got to give the Clippers credit, because they did come back to take the lead with about 30 seconds left in that game. So what I want to know from you guys is, what are your general thoughts and opinions on that game? How do you think it ended? And just let me know what you think about this video in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.